Okay, hello everybody and welcome to this session on AWS Security at Scale. My name is Tony Fendall. I'm part of the AWS team based in New Zealand, and I'm joined today by Igor Izotov. He's part of the AWS team based here in Sydney, and together we're both principal solution architects at AWS. Okay, over the next 30 minutes, we're going to talk about how AWS thinks about security. In particular, how we think about our security of the cloud and your security in the cloud. We're going to start at the bottom of our layers. We're going to work our way up through some of the layers of security that we apply in the platform. And eventually I'm going to hand to Igor, and he's going to take us through the security and how we think about the security of generative AI. Customers build and run workloads of all shapes and sizes on top of AWS. But all organizations, regardless of the work they do, have security as a priority, and they have 5 key challenges that they need to think about. The first is the natural tension between security and innovation. Leaders at organizations often think about security as the department of no, something that creates friction, something that slows down innovation. Then there's expertise and resource shortages. The security teams at your organizations are probably already working at capacity, but they're probably working on repetitive tasks rather than strategic initiatives for the business. Then there's the scale and complexity. The things that work for one workload or one AWS account change when we talk about potentially hundreds of AWS accounts across multiple AWS regions. Then there's the evolving threat landscape. The techniques and strategies that malicious actors use on the internet are evolving all the time, and your security posture and tools need to evolve with it. And finally, there's data protection and privacy demands. Your organization needs to maintain customer trust, but at the same time, you need to meet ever more stringent industry compliance regulations. All of these things together require a new approach to security, something that's going to enable robust security, but also enable innovation. At AWS, security is our top priority. And it's really important that people like yourselves can be confident that you are building on top of the most secure cloud foundation. Organizations are looking for ways that they can move security from something that's tacked on at the end of a process, something that slows things down, to something that's automated and deeply integrated into every step of development. Something that frees up your security team to focus on the really high-value strategic priorities for the business. And finally, organizations need trusted partners. These are organizations that can bring consulting expertise and managed services and innovative technology that can extend the benefit that you get from the cloud and ensure that you stay secure from end to end. Okay, I want to start by talking about how we think about security of the cloud, right? That's our core responsibility as part of the shared responsibility model. So let's start with our comprehensive security foundation. Our approach starts with 2 key principles, which are infrastructure protection and continuous innovation. You see, AWS has been built with security in mind from the very beginning. We have over 143 security and compliance certifications. This demonstrates our commitment to security at a global scale. Our security foundation operates at massive scale across all AWS regions, and we have implemented continuous monitoring and protection that runs 24/7, and we've automated our security assessments and controls. This allows us to ensure that you get consistent protection everywhere that you operate. So this brings us to our first key innovation, which is security at the silicon level. AWS, as I mentioned, is secure by design. We leverage industry-leading best practices and technologies and controls that are deeply integrated across all layers of our infrastructure to provide robust security for your applications and data. And our deep commitment to security goes all the way down to the silicon layer. So by a quick show of hands, how many people are running workloads on Graviton today? Anybody? Okay, there's a few people. I love Graviton, and if you're not running Graviton today, it's definitely something you should think about. Graviton 4 is our latest generation. It's designed to be our most powerful, secure, and energy-efficient processor to date. And you can think of this as the foundation of our security pyramid. Graviton 4 is not just about the best price performance, it introduces critical security capabilities that our other security capabilities can build on top of. If we look closer at Graviton, we can see that Graviton 4 fully encrypts all high-speed hardware interfaces, right? This helps protect you against hardware-based attacks. When data is stored in memory in Graviton 4, it is encrypted at all times, even during operations. Right? This helps protect your sensitive information. Graviton 4 implements pointer authentication. That makes it harder for a threat actor to execute code injection or control flow hijacking. And Graviton 4 implements branch target identification. This is actually new in Graviton 4. This is a new layer of defense that protects against highly sophisticated attacks that can manipulate a program's execution path. Graviton processors in EC2 provide all of these advanced security features and the very best price performance whilst using up to 60% less energy than other comparable EC2 instance families. But security doesn't stop at the silicon layer. If we move up the stack, we find the AWS Nitro system architecture. This is where silicon-level security meets system-level protection. The AWS Nitro architecture enables hardware-enforced security with features like encryption and secure boot and automated patching, and at the same time it eliminates remote access vulnerabilities. The AWS Nitro system eliminates human administrative access. All Nitro operations are implemented through APIs that are secure and authenticated, authorized, logged and audited, and least privilege. And there is no API that exists that can access your data running on that hardware. On top of that, every element of the Nitro system architecture has been designed from the beginning to be live updatable. That means that we can update the firmware on these Nitro cards, and we can even update the Nitro hypervisor itself without requiring your instances to be rebooted and without interrupting your applications. But infrastructure security is not just about hardware. We have a threat intelligence and disruption capability that also forms an active defense layer. Maintaining a high-quality list of malicious domain names is essential to monitoring cybercriminal behavior. To do this, AWS has created a powerful neural network graph model that observes more than 1 trillion DNS requests across AWS regions every single day. And every single day, it observes an average of 124,000 malicious domain names. This super graph can help us to predict malicious domain names in advance, and that means that we can identify them days, weeks, and sometimes even months before they appear in the threat intelligence feeds from other third parties. We also have an internal security service for active defense. This is a service that detects malicious scanning activity that's targeting AWS infrastructure. The AWS Active Defense Service gathers threat intelligence by processing layer 4 network traffic and service logs, and also data from our threat sensor network. In 2023 alone, the AWS Active Defense Service blocked over 27 billion attempts to enumerate S3 buckets and nearly 2.7 trillion attempts to discover vulnerable services running in EC2. And despite monitoring over 8 trillion requests in the last 3 years, AWS Active Defense has only generated 12 false positive security mitigation recommendations. Right? Those are some seriously impressive numbers. But we also believe that threat intelligence is most valuable when it is actually used. Our approach is to build threat intelligence into our security tools. All of these powerful capabilities that you've just heard about enrich the security services that you rely on to make threat intelligence available and timely and actionable and practical for your organization. We also share this information with customers if we believe that they might be targeted or compromised by malicious actors. We do this proactively so that they can maintain their risk posture and avoid interruption to their organization. And you can think of this as multiple layers of security working together, right? Right from the silicon in our processes through to the algorithms monitoring our networks. The really key takeaway is that security of the cloud is not a single feature or service, right? This is a comprehensive approach that starts right down at the hardware and exists through every single layer of our platform. This is the thing that means that we provide the most secure foundation for you to build on top of. And so now let's think about how AWS thinks about your security in the cloud. AWS has built a comprehensive security ecosystem, and that gives you 3 distinct advantages. The first one is that in AWS, you have access to over 300 purpose-built native security services. These aren't just add-ons, as we've just heard, right? These are deeply integrated features and services that protect your workloads right from the ground up. Second, through the AWS Marketplace, you have access to thousands of additional security solutions from our trusted partners. This means that you can find and deploy the right security tools that meet your exact needs, whether you're in healthcare or in finance or any other industry. And finally, AWS is committed to open source security. That means that you benefit not just from AWS's own expertise, but also the knowledge and expertise of the global security community. That means that you can stay ahead of emerging security threats. And when we look at these security services that we offer, I'm not going to go through all of these. Igor will cover some of these in a moment. But AWS provides a comprehensive approach across 4 key areas. The first is identity and access management. Right? These are the services that ensure that the right people and resources within your organization have the right access at the right time. We've got data protection services. These are the services that protect your data and the integrity and the privacy and the accessibility. We've got network and infrastructure protection. These are the services that safeguard your networks and infrastructure with multiple layers of security controls. And finally, we've got detection and response. These are the services that are continually monitoring your environment for threats and vulnerabilities and misconfigurations. These give you deep visibility into your security posture, and they also enable automated actions so you can quickly address security events if they occur. And finally, let's talk about security at the edge. At AWS, we believe that performance and availability and security start at the edge of the network. AWS CloudFront is our CDN network. It has over 700 points of presence around the world that are located close to population centers. And every single one of those points of presence is connected back to our AWS regions over the high-speed AWS backbone. This means that CloudFront can accelerate your applications. It can cache static content like JavaScript or images or videos, but it also accelerates your dynamic content. It can by backhauling those requests over our high-speed network. But the key thing for us is that we also are able to deploy our threat intelligence and detection capabilities at the edge of the network. Right? This means that you get protection right down from the silicon in our processors, right through every layer of our infrastructure out to the edge of our network. And this is the thing that means that we provide the most secure foundation for you guys to build on top of. Okay, that's been a pretty quick tour through some of the layers of security that we apply to our infrastructure. I'm now going to hand over to Igor, who's going to continue taking us up the stack and talk about the security of generative AI.
Thanks, Tony. This is really and truly amazing how we enable security at all layers, all the way from the hardware layer through to the hypervisor, and bake that into our services, allowing you, our customers, to compose architectures. The key word is compose architectures to meet your security requirements. My name is Igor, and I'm a Principal Solutions Architect here with AWS, and I'm going to be talking about everyone's favorite topic, generative AI. More specifically, about security in the context of generative AI. I want to talk about 2 stories today, or 2 use cases. The first one is how you can go about securing your Gen AI applications if you're building them using Bedrock or Q for Business. And the second one is how you can go about using Gen AI to secure other applications. So it's kind of 2 sides of the same coin, securing Gen AI and using Gen AI to secure. Forgive me for using this old and tired quote, but when it comes to securing generative AI, you really need to skate to where the puck is going to be, because it's such a fast evolving area with a lot of emergent threats. But some of the principles of security, such as defense in depth, still do apply. Let's dive into that. Defense in depth is all about building layers of security around what you value most. Around, in this particular case, your generative AI workloads. And these layers are data protection, application protection, threat detection and defense, etc., all culminating in the one layer that is often overlooked, which is your organizational set of policies. Now, it's analogous to how one would go about building a vault. You put your valuables in a building, and then you start building layers of fencing around it with barbed wire or moats, whichever analogy you prefer. The idea is quite simple. A perpetrator would be either stopped or slowed down by one of the layers, and ideally that's where the attack will stop. Now, if we take a GenAI example and take one of the threats from the OWASP top 10 list, a crowdsourced list of emergent threats, prompt injection, for example. And let's unpack it. So prompt injection is a situation where an attacker might, through carefully crafted prompts, get your application, get the foundational model powering your application to do things it's not supposed to be doing, or reveal data it's not supposed to be revealing. And one might think, well, it's an application layer concern, so let's just bake those application protection mechanisms. We're using Bedrock, we'll enable guardrails, we'll tighten the system prompt, and that person will be correct, but only partially. You still need to think about data protection. Does your application have access to just the right amount of data that it needs to do its job? No more, no less. If you have users accessing your application with varying degrees of access, for example, you're using RAG, then you need to make sure that your identity and access management aligns with the data protection layer. The threat detection aspect becomes particularly interesting in this case because of the emergence of novel threats. Like, for example, using non-printable ASCII characters, or Unicode characters, or ASCII art as a way of prompting the model. So this is where you have to be really on top of what the emergent threat landscape is, and good old regular expression just doesn't cut it anymore. And back to my earlier point, if your organization does not have a strong definition of what's critical and what's sensitive, and doesn't have a rigid data classification in place, this can all crumble and fall to pieces very easily. So all these layers have to be aligned. Now let's look at some of the AWS services that can help you implement those controls, those layers of defense. The first one I want to mention here is AWS Security Hub. It's a service that acts as a single pane of glass that surfaces all security findings from other AWS services and third-party AWS services in one place. You can then use it to initiate remediation workflows, attach runbooks, and track how you're progressing through your mitigation process. Amazon Guard Duty is another service that uses heuristics, that uses machine learning to identify malicious or suspicious behavior across all workloads deployed into your account. And needless to say, we'll surface those findings into Security Hub so that you can act upon those. KMS, a good old key management service, is fundamental for data protection. This is a service that allows you to manage your keys or let AWS manage encryption keys on your behalf. It's fundamental to data protection. And speaking of infrastructure and network protection, Shield Advanced is a tool that will help you enable DDoS protection in region and at the edge, and it integrates with Web Application Firewall and Firewall Manager. So notice how these services are truly composable. You don't need to use them all, or you can choose to use them all, and it will fit your risk profile and the sensitivity level of your application. Let's move on to the second story, using generative AI to secure your workloads. Look, Gen AI entered our private lives. It made us more productive. It made us a little bit smarter. It turned us into slightly better coders. I'm still waiting for this to happen to me, by the way. But if you look at what generative AI can do to your security teams, it can help them elevate their game. And I want to leave you with 4 calls to actions. 4 calls to action here. The first one, or the first 2, let's call them automating the mundane. Now, GenAI's ability to detect subtle correlations in data, subtle signals that will be hard or outright impossible for a human brain to do, allow you really, really simply to correlate alarms as they fire, to simplify reporting, or to summarize threat intelligence that might be coming thick and fast. The second one is an interesting application that I'd like you to think about, where consider moving away from a rules-based black and white definition of what a standard configuration is, instead letting generative AI decide whether something is anomalous or not. Again, based on the level of sensitivity of your workload, based on your risk tolerance. Instead of having like this big table and matrix with all the version of all the packages that can be installed in a dev environment, which inevitably will turn you into a department of no, because it will stifle innovation, let GenAI assess the threat intelligence, assess the combinations and the configurations and the various permutations of those, and work out whether it's anomalous or not. And if it is, recommend remediation actions. Now, chances are you have accumulated in your organization a ton of data about past events, how you dealt with them, what went right, what went wrong, who did what. Imagine a world where you could feed all of that information to a large language model and say, tell us where we can improve. And the output of it will be better runbooks. The output of it will be better detection rules, not those that you created 5 years ago and never revisited. The output of it will be, hey, I've noticed that you could have done better, your handoffs weren't perfect. It's almost like a Six Sigma approach to streamline your investigations. And the last one, the last call to action, top right corner, it's got to be the best, is imagine a world where a large language model will have the knowledge of the threat intelligence, emerging and existing, will have the knowledge of your architecture, will have visibility into your code base, and it will, on your behalf, look around corners and do truly predictive threat modeling. And then, with its help, you can do tabletop exercises to stay prepared. Now, the truth is, some of it is readily available through AWS security services. The strategy that we've taken is adding more features, adding more GenAI goodness into our existing security services, as opposed to creating new ones. So guard duty, I've mentioned guard duty before, but over time, and some customers did notice it, that guard duty has been becoming incredibly more effective and smart. Well, the reason is that all those signals that Tony's mentioned before, they have been fed through the big machine learning model, and that just makes it so much better. Detective is an interesting service which can help you investigate and build a security graph, especially when you're working through an event, through a security event. It can correlate data points and build a timeline of events, what led to what, and how it can be remediated. And it will use generative AI to produce reports to help with your investigation. Inspector is another interesting service that will use machine learning reachability tests to notify you of potential known vulnerabilities or potential cases of overexposure of data. Macy, good old Macy. It's a well-proven service that's been becoming incredibly important for customers who want to prevent inadvertent disclosure of sensitive data on S3. Needless to say, sensitive data may mean many things to many customers, and Macy has been becoming incredibly more and more intelligent as it's been gaining those generative AI and machine learning capabilities. My personal favorite is IAM Access Analyzer. It's a service that will quietly sit and listen to your IAM policies and will notify you using a subsection of machine learning called automated reasoning in a data-driven way that, for example, hey, this permission, you don't need it, right? Reduce it, drop it from your policy, go one step closer towards that least privilege principle direction. If you're building code, shifting things left is generally a good idea. This is where services like QDeveloper and Code Guru Security can help you build better, more secure code with less vulnerabilities. For us, a testament of customer trust is the workloads that customers put on AWS. And year on year, more and more customers put more and more of their sensitive, most business critical workloads onto AWS. I want to tell you 3 quick customer stories to maybe inspire you. So HSBC, global financial services organization, chose to modernize their wealth and personal banking application using AWS with a specific focus on uplifting its security because of the level of sensitivity of this workload. As a result, this application now services over 1 million customers globally and at an unprecedented level of resilience and security. Teva Pharmaceuticals, a leading pharma company globally, chose AWS to secure their most critical data set with medical records and research data, whilst at the same time accelerating the pace of drug research and discovery. GoDaddy, a web hoster and a domain registrar, traditionally ran their workloads on premises, but looked to AWS to specifically uplift their security posture and specifically reduce cost using serverless. After that modernization has been completed, they've achieved levels of security and resilience that were simply not possible in their legacy on-premises environment. We're almost at an end. You can scan those QR codes now, or you can wait until this session is published online. But whatever your preferred mode of training and learning is, we have something for you. If you prefer a more in-person experience, go and sign up for a security activation day in your city. If you prefer a hands-on, self-paced lab experience, sign up for an immersion day. If you're ready to kick the tires and try some of those security services I've just spoken about in your environment, go and sign up for a 30-day free trial of select AWS services. On that note, Tony and I would like to thank you for your participation. We really hope you found this session useful. We're going to stick around if you have any questions. Thank you very much.